Greetings. I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about theory and giving some examples and trying to put some things into perspective. What I have here is an article from Theoretical Criminology, 2015, Volume 19, Issue 1, pages 112 to 130, written by Andrew Goldsmith and Russell Brewer, called Digital Drift and the Criminal Interaction Order. A very, very fascinating article, and you can, of course, get this article through the UCF library if you wanted to read it. But one of the reasons I pulled this article to present and discuss is because the authors are bringing in Professor Matza's early work from 1964 on delinquency and drift. In fact, I have his 1969 book, Becoming Deviant. Someone even glued in part of the original cover. But anyway, the article on digital drift is fascinating because it brings back some earlier theory and applies it to something that wasn't around during the development of that theory, which is basically the internet. And so here the authors look at the relationship of the internet to crime, and especially new crimes. And one of the challenges we have in criminal justice theory are new crimes, especially those technologically related ones where the internet is used in a variety of ways. And of course, things are going to continue to get much more complex. And the authors, basically Goldsmith and Brewer, talk about this whole idea of digital drift into crime. In other words, people using the internet and how they can get involved in different types of criminal activities. I would say certainly as perpetrators, but also I think this really applies to victims as well. And I'll use some examples as they do. And so they discuss the internet as being a proxy partner and a product basically that's very easy to use, and that we need new thinking about all this. Obviously, the internet's been around a while now, and we have some research, but we don't have a lot of theoretical approaches to studying internet crimes in a specific manner. The whole idea of digital drift, bringing Matza's earlier work into the current scenario, is that people drift in and out of criminal activities. Sometimes they get involved in it accidentally, and also they can get involved in unpredictable ways. And so in many ways, we begin to start looking at more of maybe a microsociological analysis of an individual or a small group of people. Also, there's a variety of features related to the internet, the anonymous nature of interactions and communications, and of course, we don't have to be in the same physical location to have these communications. Can you imagine if what people said to each other on Facebook, they said to each other while they're standing in line at the bank or the bakery or the post office? We would have nonstop fighting. It would be a very antagonistic situation. And certainly there's some other features as well that we'll talk about related to different types of crime. And also we can bring in the social learning perspective. Later on we'll see routine activities theory can be applied to maybe preventing internet crimes. And we can also begin to question, as the authors do, the issue of trust and social control, self-control, the intensities of interactions, and how people engage and disengage with the internet, and how they feel like they may belong to a particular group and identify with a particular group. And there's also the issue of we're seeing criminal activities becoming more leisure activities in that sense. And later on when we discuss terrorism and internet related crimes, they're of course dealing with ideological messages that support the belief systems and uses of terrorism. So this digital drift can also be sporadic, and it's certainly a way that people can obtain knowledge, but also they can think about their risks of being caught engaging in different types of criminal activities. And the authors present 2 case studies, one on lone wolf terrorism and the other on pedophilia online. So when they talk about lone wolf terrorism in cyberspace, they talk about the availability of multiple sources of information and support. So there's resources on how to engage in terrorist activities. People can hide their identities through virtual private networks, through the dark web, through a host of other features. There also are the techniques of neutralization, which Sykes and Matza presented in their sociological article about how people account for and make excuses for the harm that they cause other. And there's also the ability of people to self-indoctrinate themselves into different terrorist ideologies. And this might actually lead to a revision of our concept of the lone wolf terrorist, which is kind of thought of as a person who engages in terrorism on their own without the support of a group. But we might find that indeed, as the authors point out, that there may be digital partners. And we have seen some cases where we see the so-called lone wolf terrorist was supported in a variety of ways, with knowledge, with the ideological support, the social learning methodologies, the neutralizations, and also physical support in terms of weapons that they were able to obtain in different locations through information sent to them through their digital partner. And this is probably something we're going to have to take a much closer look at in the future as well. The second case study, pedophilia online, that certainly is something that we could look at as related to pedophilia as a mental disorder, but I think also we would take a close look at the illegal activity of viewing or downloading or trading child pornography. And certainly we're all familiar with the show To Catch a Predator, where usually a man is talking to a law enforcement officer posing as a child, and then they set up a meeting for sexual interaction, and when the offender gets there, they're arrested, and that takes care of that becoming a legal case. But also I think what's important to look at is the online drift situation, where the line may be more ambiguous in some activities. Again, it's easy, anonymous, and inviting, and people may drift into that. We have an example in our book, and there's other examples as well, certainly when we've conducted interviews and looked at the literature, where people have reported drifting into it or getting involved in viewing child pornography accidentally, and then it becoming something that was enticing or exciting to them, and they then purposely sought out the material. And so there's examples that are provided there. There's also the impulsivity and the ease and maybe for some the strangeness of it. You know, for example, a guy's at his computer and he's working and he doesn't have any friends. He's lonely, and so he goes to a site because he wants to, let's say, view some adult pornography, and maybe that relaxes him. I don't know. And so he goes to the site and he's viewing some videos or whatever, and all of a sudden a little message box pops up that says, "Hi, it's Rachel here, and I live 2.4 miles from you, and I want sex." Okay, well, now the whole different scenario has come into play, and that guy may ignore it, may freak out and close down his computer, never to go back to that site again, may scan his computer for viruses, or may click on it. And what he may find, you know, for example, in one case I'm familiar with, that someone invited the woman to his house, and she showed up along with a man who tried to mace the man, the homeowner, and commit assault and robbery. So there's always that danger. Of course, someone could engage in that activity and find out that it's a prostitution ring, and that would be considered illegal. Of course, if it was just a woman 2.1 miles away named Rachel who wanted to have sex, and they were both consenting adults, and they did that, I don't believe that there would be any laws that would be breached there. But I think most of us would assume that those are basically escort services and the like. But you can see how the person drifts into that area, and maybe people begin to drift into other areas related to cyberbullying and cyber stalking, and this may increase in intensity over time. We need more research, and looking at the different types, the frequencies of use, the intensity, the interactions people have with these sites, and most importantly for our purposes, theories that explain internet criminal behaviors. And of course, we could go ahead and have other examples related to hacking groups, or those that engage in credit card fraud and theft, or bank theft, and a host of others. It's we have books and books written about how these internet crimes take place. But I think it's real important to think about getting a theory into place, and examining different theories and testing out hypotheses related to these theories. Because the question I'll leave you with in this short video, I'll leave a couple questions, maybe a couple questions here. First, what theories apply to cyber crimes, and which theories do not? And how would theories need to be modified, perhaps, to address this new type of situation? And when I say new, I think the first time I used a computer, I was in my last year of my bachelor's degree, and that was basically to just type on one. And it wasn't until I was in grad school that I actually had access to one of those old, computers where you stored your data on a 5 1/4 floppy drive, and your program on another 5 1/4 floppy drive, and you had drive A and drive B, and you were operating on DOS 2.1 or something like that, and you had a dot matrix printer. And okay, enough of that. And then finally, the question: what will the future look like? And things just seem to be rapidly changing, and becoming very different in a variety of ways. So we really need to start taking a closer look at those scenarios as well. And this wraps up this video.